Welcome to the Three Kingdoms period of China, a place where a misunderstanding can kill thousands, and a lapse in judgment can kill millions, and a period of time when standing up to your corrupt government can get you kidnapped, tortured, and your entire clan exterminated. I assure you, I am absolutely talking about ancient China right now. Total War Three Kingdoms is a strategy game made by the Creative Assembly and set during this period, but before we can talk about the video games, we have to talk about the history. The Three Kingdoms period was the time when the Han Empire crumbled, and three new empires took their place, only for each of them to crumble and be replaced by an even newer empire. The period officially lasted from the year 220 to 280 AD, but people often associate the beginning of the period with the start of the Yellow Turban Rebellion in the year 184 AD. Pretty much all contemporary Three Kingdoms media is based on Luo Guanzhong's 14th century book, The Romance of the Three Kingdoms, which was based on Chen Shou's 3rd century book, The Records of the Three Kingdoms. But what does that mean? It means a lot of stuff happened in between the publication of the two books, a lot of folklore was added, a lot of bias was shown, and a bit of 14th century presentism was sprinkled in. Also, magic.
Feel the power of my magic!
How many people died from ghost-related murder during this period? The answer may surprise you. Though the Romance of the Three Kingdoms might not sound immediately familiar, you've no doubt experienced or heard about it through Cao Wei's Dynasty Warriors series. Dynasty Warriors is Chinese history on crack, but it's actually a much better introduction to the era than Total War Three Kingdoms is, as it focuses on a select few personalities within each faction, something that a strategy game of this scale just doesn't have the luxury of attempting. But the problem with Dynasty Warriors is that the series often overlooks history in favour of the more fantastical elements of the source material, and is made by a shit developer. The setting itself is not exactly accessible to non-Chinese audiences. Even franchises centred on the book can't even get it right.
I am Cao Pi, like my father Cao Cao.
So you'd be forgiven for being a little confused when the game expects you to remember Cao Cao, Cao Pi, Cao Ang, Cao Ren, Cao Nima, Cao Swarabiya. This might all sound overwhelming, but while at first you'll say Xiahou Dun, Xiahou Yun, more like shut your mouth, the next you'll be all,
are there any who would face my might? Any who can?
I lived in Guangzhou, China for 5 years, so I have the distinct honour of being referred to as Lao Wai and a Gui Lo on a daily basis. It also means that Chinese historical references, customs and names are a lot easier for me to digest. I don't envy anybody trying to make sense of this for the first time. So, in order to demonstrate just how culturally different the source material is, from not only Western views, but even modern day China, I've peppered a little quiz for you randomly throughout this video to find out whether you would fit into the Three Kingdoms era China. You're an extremely poor villager living in the countryside with your family when local legend Liu Bei happens by, fresh off his latest defeat. You invite him inside. What do you do next? Do you immediately pledge your life to his cause, regardless of the risk to your family's safety? Rat him out to the local authorities to earn a reward for his capture? Or kill your wife and mother and serve their flesh to him to give him enough energy to continue his journey? If you chose A or B, then you lack honour and virtue. That villager was rewarded handsomely for his personal sacrifice, in a time when personal sacrifice meant personally sacrificing somebody else to demonstrate your loyalty. So now that you're all caught up, let's actually talk about the video games. Total War Three Kingdoms is a hybrid strategy game where you take control of a faction and navigate the violent, neurotic, and autistic personalities of ancient China. All of your political, financial, and sexual conquests are carried out in the turn-based campaign map, while all the battles can be directly controlled in real time. Your goal? Unite China. Then maybe, just maybe, Sun Ren might answer your phone calls. China is in turmoil, and has been divided by various warlords, separatists, and tribes all vying for hegemony. Much like the novel, Total War Three Kingdoms is very character-centric and defines the faction by the faction leader. So if your faction leader dies, the faction name will change to reflect the new leader, making it feel just a little more personal. In the campaign map, you guide your armies as they attack, defend, and ambush the enemy. And when the deed is done, decide what to do with the survivors. The mechanics of the campaign map are pretty much the same as all other Total Wars, only a little more streamlined compared to previous titles. For example, choosing to auto-resolve a battle will tell you exactly what result you'll get. Agents, which previously moved and acted independently to the armies, are now controlled in a menu. Instead of getting a generic goon to stab archbishops in the dick, you can now ask a noteworthy character in Chinese history to be a spy, assassin, and saboteur. When trading in the older games, it was very vague to understand what other factions want, and extremely time-consuming to make deals with more than one faction a turn. In Three Kingdoms, you can access the Quick Deals tab, which tells you exactly what they will and won't accept, and also gives you the exact trade value of the negotiations, letting you fine-tune it to the precise amount of coin you can wring out of Cao Cao for a wooden dog.
You show wisdom.
Jesus Christ, I nearly cried when I first experienced this feature. It's the single best improvement in the series. There are two distinct ways to play the game, Romance Mode and Records Mode. Both modes are pretty much identical in the campaign map. The uniqueness reveals itself in the battles. In Romance Mode, every named character is just as, if not more, superpowered as their Dynasty Warriors counterpart. Battles in Romance Mode are fast, explosive, and require completely different strategies to Records Mode. In Romance Mode, a single hero unit can carve their way through a battlefield and wreak havoc with special abilities. Their presence on the battlefield is impossible to ignore. A single high-level hero unit can be powerful enough to halt an entire army from entering a city, or rally their troops to push them back into the fight. Every major faction has a powerful hero unit, whether it's the invincible Liu Bu, the suicidally brave He Yi, or the overrated and impossibly talented Zhuge Liang. They all play a part in driving their armies towards victory, though the armies themselves are mainly an extension of their leaders' abilities. It wouldn't be completely accurate to say that the heroes win battles on their own, but Romance Mode is certainly geared towards empowering the heroes as much as possible. They provide huge buffs for their units and debuffs for the enemy units. Armies in Romance Mode have greater pools of morale and stamina, and are able to run across the battlefield and back with little consequence. So aside from flanking bonuses, you'll probably spend less time strategizing your main army, and more time working out where to send the absolute wrecking ball that is Zhang Fei to cause maximum damage. Losing a single hero is so important, and can cause a mass retreat from your entire army in dire circumstances. Conversely, defeating an enemy hero has the opportunity to turn the tide of the battle in your favour. To highlight this, the developers included duels.
We have killed an enemy general!
Two hero units are able to challenge each other to a fight to the death. Doing this will lock them down until the duel is resolved, while the battle carries on around them. That begs the question, why would you ever accept an enemy duelist's request when you can so clearly see who is the better fighter? First of all, the outcome can often be surprising. Second of all, sometimes it does wonders for the rest of your army to take their star general off the field, even momentarily. Maybe your general has no hope of winning the duel, but can last long enough for the rest of the army to rout the enemy forces while their general can't support them anymore. It's a whole new layer of strategy to consider when playing in Romance Mode, and for Total War veterans, quite a novel concept for a historical setting. However, if the novelty eventually runs dry, you can always return to Records Mode, the classic Total War experience. In Records Mode, fatigue is an always present danger, where you may have to withdraw units from a clash to allow them time to catch their breath. Generals are flanked by a bodyguard unit and don't have supernatural fighting abilities. There are also a few minor graphical changes in character models with more historically accurate equipment. It's a more honest mode, where one enemy general won't be able to fight through your melee troops and rout all your archers. So how do these battles actually work? At the start of every battle, unless you're being ambushed, you get to place your units within the deployment zone and set up whatever fortifications that you've researched. Some generals can even unlock the ability to deploy outside of their deployment zones, which might be the most overpowered thing in the game. After deploying, you employ whatever tactical advantage you may have, whether it's utilizing forests to hide troops, taking high ground to make it harder for the enemy to assault your position, or finding ways to distract and flank enemy units. There are two major components of your army you need to manage outside basic tactics and formations. Those are fatigue and morale. If you send your units running from one side of the map to the other, they'll be too exhausted to fight once they reach the enemy. You'll need to manage the fatigue of your troops to get the most out of them. As for morale, the only thing keeping these poor peasants on the battlefield is the belief that they might survive. The split second they realize that the situation is hopeless, they'll run for the hills. Their morale levels are affected by the size of the enemy army, the proximity of their generals, their fatigue, the damage their unit has already taken, the presence of fire, rumors of Liu Bu, seeing their allies flee, seeing their general lose his head, wild animals, pretty much anything to be honest. Peasant militia are a bunch of pussies, and rightfully so. They are fighting for the system that consistently abuses them. The battles themselves are not overly complex. The AI can be exploited in many ways, but not quite as easily as simply opening and closing the gates during a siege as in Medieval 2. In a standard field battle, the dominant strategy is usually to engage as much of the enemy force with your infantry, while sending your cavalry around the flanks to rout their archers and attack their engaged forces from behind. The extent of your success is really measured by the size and experience of your army, along with the quality of your generals. But that's not to say that the hero units are the be-all and end-all. I've held off huge armies with far fewer soldiers and none of my own generals just by using superior tactics. But to be fair, I've also defeated several armies with the power of one single unstoppable hero, and that hero is Liu Bu. If you're able to beg, bribe and pander to his every whim, you'll have the most powerful character in the game, in which case, forget about tactics. You don't really need them anymore. You can simply send Liu Bu ahead of his army to assassinate each enemy general and watch their army crumble. This time, you are Liu Bei, fresh off your latest defeat. After retreating for some time, you realise that your wife and baby, your future heir, were completely left behind. Whoops. One of your greatest generals, Zhao Yun, fights his way through an army to retrieve your heir, then battles back through the same army to finally reunite you with him. How do you react to this event? Do you reward your general handsomely and hold him as a paragon of heroes? Scold him for failing to save your wife as well? Or toss your infant son to the ground to express how angry you are that your star general risked his life for the sake of a baby? I don't think I need to explain myself here. The Romance of the Three Kingdoms novel is famed for having over 1,000 named characters, but only about 50 or so are worth a damn. So let's delve into the famous faces of ancient China. Cao Cao, as in all Three Kingdoms media, is best boy. There is nothing he won't do to win. He will lie, cheat, betray, and debase himself for even the slightest advantage. Playing as Cao Cao is pretty much like playing as the CIA, as his special ability is to incite proxy wars in rival lands in order to destabilize foreign governments enough to invade and install his own leadership. It's perfect. Liu Bei is a bitch-ass sucker who pays to win. The Romance of the Three Kingdoms was written with a heavy Liu Bei bias. He's written as a paragon of virtue who won't ever cross the line, no matter how tempting it may be, except for when he does. Due to poor parenting, his son became so incompetent, nobody knows why, that his name, Adao, is now synonymous with moron in Chinese. Everything that Liu Bei gained, Adao lost. Gameplay-wise, Liu Bei is actually pretty good. He has two of the best warriors, Guan Yu and Zhang Fei, at his side from the beginning, with more joining him over the course of a campaign. As the so-called Imperial Uncle, Liu Bei is able to spend his Roblox fun bucks to buy out any Han Empire settlement without a fight. Sun Quan is descended from Sun Jian, the man who historically accomplished most of the things that the Romance attributes to other leaders. But don't worry about Sun Quan just yet. If you know what you're doing and choose to give the middle finger to optional historical events, you may just unite all of China before Sun Quan grows into adulthood. Sun Jian is a train, and this locomotive stops for nobody. Southern China is basically yours for the taking. Then you just work your way up and paint the entire country red. Well done. Those are the three main factions. The Three Kingdoms, if you will. There are about 12 other factions to choose from in the base game, and even more in the DLC. I'm talking Yuan Shao, the Puppet Master, Dong Zhuo, Uncouth, Unclean, and most likely, Uncut, as was everybody else during that time. He Yi is suicidally brave. That's my favourite character description in the game, and there are many more. However, the large amount of factions only highlights the biggest flaw in the game. Every single one of them wants the same damn thing. They all want to capture 95 settlements and become emperor. Even the Yellow Turbans, who revolted against the Empire in the beginning, want to do that. Because of that, it doesn't really matter how mechanically different the factions might be. Your success really just hinges on how well you can take and hold land. This is pretty accurate to the source material. Unfortunately, Luo Guanzhong was a pretty amateur game designer, and didn't even think about varied faction win conditions when he wrote the novel. So what that means is that in Three Kingdoms, once you've played a campaign or two, you've pretty much seen the bulk of what the game has to offer. It's all more of the same, but with slightly different units and maybe a bit of flavour added to diplomacy. But that's all for the base game. The DLC did add some varied victory conditions for the new factions, but rather than include them in the main campaign, the DLC takes place as an almost separate thing, which is a huge shame, because variety is what the base game needed, just to flesh out or overhaul some of the lesser known factions. There were some extras added into the base game after each DLC release, with the most substantial one being the fleshed out Nanman factions being added and the map being expanded, but I never really cared much for it. Because of that, I never bought any of the DLC. Well, except for the Blood DLC. The DLC has also brought some other issues to the game. Creative Assembly made the incredibly popular announcement that they were going to cut support to the game. Why did they do that? Nobody knows. It is a mystery. The game still had a lot of bugs in it, and it only got worse with the release of each DLC. And that's unfortunate, because I love this setting, and I want more people to love it too. But the two main entry points for gamers right now are Creative Assembly's fantastic yet buggy strategy game, or Koei Tecmo's unrestrained greed and mediocrity. But I can't leave this review on such a sour note. There's so much this game does that deserves praise. I love the aesthetics of this game. The UI, the character portraits, even the skyboxes really transport you to ancient China. The research and love for the setting is apparent. The references to the novel are numerous. Even the voice acting for the main characters suits them so well.
Harmony behind us. Harmony ahead.
Excellently said, noble friend. So, to battle?
Let us test the mettle of these new foes.
Liu Bu has a weird accent going on, but it's cool. The setting is grand, and the scale is, dare I say, epic. It's a wonderful game that's mostly limited by its own setting. My ideal Three Kingdoms era game would be a grand strategy game in the vein of Crusader Kings, where the sheer scale of the conflict would go hand in hand with the relentless scheming of the politicians. There is a Three Kingdoms era mod for Crusader Kings 2, but it's just not polished enough for my liking. Until a proper game of its kind comes out, Total War Three Kingdoms will remain as my go-to for premium Three Kingdoms era content. Thank you for joining me on this journey. I really appreciate it. See you next time. You are Liu Bei, fresh off your latest defeat, and find yourself in the prosperous Shu province. Cao Qian, who is sick and dying, offers governorship of the province. Doing so will allow you, who has had no base of operations, to house your soldiers, while also providing stability to the people, as they will most likely fall into the hands of a less deserving warlord if you don't accept his proposal. Do you reject his proposal once? Reject his proposal twice? Reject his proposal 3 goddamn times? What the hell is wrong with you, Liu Bei? You idiot! God, I hate you!